Hello, and welcome to the second episode of the No Name podcast that isn't really a podcast and is actually my homework. I'm your host, Anna, and with me today is my close friend, Ellie, a former LA resident and eco-rep. Today, we will be discussing the history of LA's reliance on imported water, the threats facing their water supply, and what they're doing to reduce reliance on water imports. But first, how are you doing today, Ellie? How are you feeling about being back on the No Name podcast that isn't really a podcast and is actually my homework, following our last wildly successful episode about contamination in the Umatilla groundwater basin?
I've been great over here. We're ready to go. I'm ready to learn some new things and help spread some knowledge out there for people to learn as well.
Wow, that is so encouraging. For those who don't know Ellie is currently a veterinarian. She lived in LA while getting her bachelor's degree from 2014 to 2018. What was it like? What was LA like?
It was beautiful, very warm, but I lived there during one of the biggest droughts of the century, I think. And the campus made a lot of changes to how we ran things, how much water we used while I was there. So I definitely am familiar with LA water and needing to conserve it.
We love to hear it here. Wait, but you also said you were an eco-rep. What is an eco-rep?
Yes, I was an eco-rep. It's an on-campus group of students who help promote environmentally friendly practices on campus. We focused so much on water conservation while I was there, which was pretty cool and pretty fun to work on.
So you're basically a water conservation expert.
At one point in my life, I kind of was.
All right, let's dive in. Los Angeles, founded by Spanish settlers in 1781 on the ancestral lands of the Tongva people, has grown from a humble pueblo into the second largest city in the United States. Over the years, it developed one of the most complex water systems in the nation, shaped by both its natural environment and ambitious engineering projects. Located in Southern California, Los Angeles is known for its Mediterranean climate and cyclical hydrology, with average temperatures ranging from 67 degrees Fahrenheit to 85 degrees Fahrenheit, and an average annual precipitation coming in at just 13.7 inches.
Jeez, that's like nothing.
I know, not compared to Portland.
Seriously.
Unsurprisingly, as the city's population climbed to over 4 million people and sprawled out over 472 square miles, the city's thirst for water has grown. In its early years, the Spanish pueblo of Los Angeles relied on the Los Angeles River for its water. Honestly, I had no idea that the Los Angeles River was even a thing. Like, is this a thing? Have you physically laid eyes on the Los Angeles River?
Yeah, it is. It's like a cement concrete basin that the water flows through. Most of the time the water's pretty low, steady stream in the middle, not a lot going on.
That sounds more like a canal than a river.
Yeah, that's what it was, basically. Lots of concrete.
This is ridiculous. This it's not real, people. It's not real. Anyway, the river's water was distributed throughout the city via a network of basic dams, water wheels, and ditches. Then, in 1860, the first significant water infrastructure project was completed by the Los Angeles Water Company. Though the Los Angeles Water Company was seemingly holding down the fort for the city, in 1902, LA formally absorbed the LA Water Company, which then became the first LA municipal water system. Soon after, the city absorbed the Los Angeles Water Company and turned it into LA's first municipal water system. It became apparent that LA's water needs were quickly outgrowing the little Los Angeles River that isn't really a real river. Yes, okay, it is a real river, but
it's changed a lot due to people.
I don't know how I feel about it. With a thirsty population of about 142,000, the city started to look elsewhere for a water source. On July 29, 1905, LA residents woke up to the leading story in the Los Angeles Daily Times, which was their version of Instagram, announcing the city's purchase of land and water rights in Owens Valley in the Sierra Nevada mountains. The city's plan was to pipe water from the Sierra Nevadas 250 miles south to LA. Headed by William Mulholland, who was huge in the political water scene at the time, the plan turned into the construction of the LA Aqueduct. The LA Aqueduct was completed in 1913, 8 years after the initial purchase of land and water rights. When the first drop of imported water hit LA, Mulholland famously said, "There it is, take it." Which I have to say is pretty bold, though he was considered a local hero at the time. Then, in 1925, the city's municipal water system was established as the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. Immediately after the establishment of the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, or the LADWP, as we'll be referring to it as, LA residents approved the funds to start engineering the Colorado River Aqueduct. This project was going to be a massive undertaking. To complete it, the LADWP brought all cities in the region together to form a special state district in 1928. The district was called the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, and its purpose was to construct the Colorado River Aqueduct to import water to Southern California. Construction of the project began in 1931 and went on for 10 years.
Wow, that sounds like the 1930s.
Yep, the 30s. What a great time to be alive. Flashing forward to modern times, today LA's water supply is drawn from a combination of sources, though it's still heavily reliant on imported water. In 2023, 51% of the city's water came from the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. 38% of the city's water came from the Los Angeles Aqueduct, and 9% from groundwater, with 2% from recycled water. Despite an increase in population by more than 1 million people over the past 30 years, bringing the city's population to just over 4 million, overall water use in the city has decreased. Water conservation efforts, regulations, and changes in behavior have contributed to the decrease in water use despite significant population growth.
Keep talking about imported water, but I don't really understand what that is. Like, what exactly does imported water mean?
So, imported water is water that's being sourced in from outside of the LA region. And boy, oh boy, are we about to talk about it, Ellie. Buckle up.
This is actually like when I lived there, I remember them being like, oh, our water's like coming from Colorado. It was weird and foamy water, and I didn't really pay that much attention to it, but I'm interested to learn more.
Wow, that is actually very is that foreshadowing? Is that the word of like what we're about to talk about?
That's amazing.
Here we go. So as we discussed earlier, the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, otherwise known as MWD, was established in 1928 to help the region address their growing water needs by constructing the Colorado River Aqueduct. After the completion of the Colorado River Aqueduct in 1941, MWD worked on the State Water Project that was completed in the 70s.
That was a lot of names of a lot of places and companies, organizations. Can you break that down a little bit more for me?
Of course. So this is a little confusing. There's a lot of different, acronyms and different names of things. So
Yeah.
if you need clarification, let me know. So the MWD sells water to the LADWP, which again, the LADWP is the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. The water MWD is selling the LAWP, makes up about 51% of LA's water consumption, and is coming from the State Water Project and the Colorado River Aqueduct.
Wait, okay, I actually like have a question that is sort of relevant here, but they're selling the water? Like this is a business or is it they're state owned, right?
MWD, they are a like a water district of Southern California. So they're responsible for sourcing water for this region.
Mm,
And LADWP is like LA's water department,
got it.
basically. So MWD, they created the Colorado River Aqueduct
Yeah.
and the state state water project.
Yeah.
So then because they created those and are responsible for like managing them and like the day-to-day operations,
Yeah.
they sell the water. They're kind of act as like the middleman
It makes sense.
to LADWP.
It probably like if you live in LA, you probably have to pay taxes towards the LA group buying the water for you. And like it makes sense that there's fewer people living in like Fresno, California, so they can pay for their portion kind of thing. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So, I mean, an LADWP and MWD, like they do work together. It's not just MWD selling LADWP water. Like they're working together to ensure like water quality standards.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
like
it's pretty, cohesive.
Classic government situation.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to go move on to the State Water Project. And remember, State Water Project is a function of MWD in addition to the Colorado River Aqueduct. Those are the two things that MWD made. So the California State Water Project is a massive water storage and delivery system that spans 750 miles, which is about 2/3 the length of California. It's one of the most significant water infrastructure projects in the United States, delivering clean water to about 27 million Californians, irrigating 750,000 acres of farmland, and supporting businesses throughout the state. Planned, built, operated, and maintained by the California Department of Water Resources. This is a new player. We have not talked about the California Department of Water Resources.
Oh no, I can't keep track.
Okay, this one they won't be mentioned that often. So.
Okay, good. I'll forget.
Okay, so the California Department of Water Resources, planned, built, operated, and maintained starting in the 1960s, the State Water Project, which is the largest state-owned water and power system in the nation. Its waters come from the high Sierra Nevadas, where snowmelt and rain travel via rivers and tributaries to the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta. From the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta, the water travels through canals, pipelines, reservoirs, and hydroelectric power facilities to reach communities and farms across the state. The most commonly known infrastructure of the State Water Project is the California Aqueduct.
Yes, I actually remember hearing about the California Aqueduct when I lived there. That's just part of the State Water Project, right?
Yes. So the California Aqueduct is a part of the State Water Project. It's one of the main infrastructures of it. But we're just going to refer to all of the infrastructure of the State Water Project, including the California Aqueduct, as the State Water Project.
Got it. Okay.
All right. And get this, though. If the State Water Project was its own nation, it would have the 8th largest economy in the world. Isn't that, like, kind of wild?
I kind of knew that already.
Seriously?
Yeah.
That a water project was the 8th largest economy in the world? Because isn't California, like, it would be the 5th largest if it was...
I think that's what I knew. I think I knew California was the 5th largest.
But just this water project would be the 8th largest.
That's actually insane.
I know, that's what I'm saying. I don't get it, but... Okay, so this thing, the State Water Project, supports 8.7 million full-time jobs, employs 160,000 farm workers, and sustains 800,000 businesses. I mean, 7 out of 10 Californians get their water in part from the State Water Project. It even produces energy, and it is the 4th largest energy producer in the state. And the best part is that you can recreate on its lakes, lagoons, reservoirs, and aqueducts.
That's pretty cool. I actually remember we did a couple of trips like up to the mountains and stuff, and I also took a water. It was like I forget what it's called, but it was something about like environmental water care class. We went to a lot of streams in the area and just tested water quality things. It was really fun.
Yeah, and that was all probably on the State Water Project
Yeah,
waters.
probably.
Which I guess I'm going to have to take a summer trip down there and go paddleboard on the waters or something because I did not know that this was a thing.
It's beautiful, like stunning. When there's water in the lakes and rivers. And
Dun
such.
dun dun.
It's not a drought.
So circling back to MWD, the MWD acts like a middleman between the California Department of Water Resources that runs the State Water Project and the LADWP. So we kind of cover this, just going over a little bit more again. The MWD is basically a middleman. So the MWP, again, purchases water from for the Southern California region from the Department of Water Resources, and then the MWD sells the water to the LADWP for the city of LA to use. Like, it is a little confusing.
It's definitely a little confusing, but it's starting to make a little more sense to me.
I just have to say it more, like repetition.
Yeah.
You had mentioned the Colorado River, like that you remembered California, like when you lived in LA, that California got us water from the Colorado River. Are you ready? Like we're gonna go into it now.
Yeah, I want to learn more.
This is it. So MWD also sells water to LADWP that comes from the Colorado River via the Colorado River Aqueduct. Remember, the MWD was initially formed in 1928 specifically to engineer and build the Colorado River Aqueduct to meet the growing water demands of a growing LA.
Yep, I remember learning about that.
And the construction of the Colorado River Duct, it was not easy. Once construction started in 1931 on the Colorado River Aqueduct, it took workers, once again, 10 years to complete. And these poor workers, they were working in 120-degree heat in a literal desert for 10 years. So Southern California, particularly LA, could have water. I've also done manual labor in 120-degree heat, and it is brutal, but 10 years of working in that heat, count me out or count me actually dead from dehydration. For reals.
I used to play soccer in that weather. It is brutal. And we were out there for like an hour, 2 hours max.
And this wasn't even in the desert because the Colorado River Aqueduct flows through the Coachella Valley, the desert.
Oh, God. That's like Palm Springs area. It's so hot.
Yeah, absolutely not. But you were because, I mean...
I was east of LA a little bit, which is kind of deserty. Like, it gets cold at night. It's pretty hot and dry during the day. But not consistently 120 degrees. More like 100 degrees.
No,
but we would ice bath.
Conservatively. That always helps. Yeah.
Conservatively, we had to ice bath with the football players. It was disgusting.
Gross, sick.
We were saving water.
Yeah. Water conservation!
1 time a day.
Anyway, long story short, those poor workers. Once the Colorado River Aqueduct was completed in 1941, it was 242 miles long, with 150 miles of canals, siphons, conduits, and pipelines. Additionally, 5 pumping plants were built. And the pumping plants, which this is so cool, the pumping plants pump water over the mountains at 5 separate points along the Colorado River Aqueduct. And then, once the water is pumped over the mountains, it just flows down by gravity. And I think that's just so beautiful, and I love it.
Am I understanding this right? MWD supplies water to a district of Southern California, and then LADWP is the purchaser? Like, this is kind of what we were talking about earlier, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So, one more time for the folks back home. MWD supplies water to a district of Southern California, and LADWP buys its water from MWD for the city to use. The water MWD sells to the city comes from the State Water Project and the Colorado River Aqueduct that we just talked about.
So, how much of LA's water comes from MWD again?
In 2023, 51% of LA's water came from MWD, which was the Colorado River Aqueduct and the State Water Project.
Okay, you said that before. I remember now.
Yeah. So moving on to the LADWP. Let's not confuse all the acronyms here, right? So we went over this earlier, but again, there are so many players in the imported water scene of LA. So another quick rundown. If you recall, the Los Angeles Water Company was the first to complete a significant water infrastructure project in LA in 1860.
Mm-hmm.
The Los Angeles Water Company was then absorbed by the city in 1902 and went on to become the city's first municipal water system before officially being established in 1925 as the LADWP that we know today. Today, the LADWP is the second largest municipal water utility in the country, and it prides itself on providing high-quality, reliable water for the city of LA, both now and in the future. To do this, they maintain 7,300 miles of main lines and trunk lines, other water infrastructure, and storage facilities within the city and the surrounding areas. LADWP is also the same entity that built the LA Aqueduct that accounted for 38% of LA's water in 2023. Construction for the first LA Aqueduct was started in 1908 and completed in 1913. It brought tens of millions of gallons of water into the city each day from Owens Valley in the Sierra Nevada mountains, which is 250 miles north of LA. The LA Aqueduct, in addition to the Colorado River Aqueduct that came online in 1941, did provide an adequate amount of water for many years. However, LA was still growing and needed more water. To meet its water needs, the LADWP started construction on another barrel of the aqueduct called the second LA Aqueduct. The second LA Aqueduct was started in 1965 and completed in 1970 and has a smaller total water capacity than the first LA Aqueduct, but they work in tandem to bring water from Northern California to LA. So together they are simply called the LA Aqueduct. Additionally, the LA Aqueduct relies only on gravity to bring water south from Owens Valley.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, because the Colorado River, they use gravity, but after it gets pumped up the mountains.
Yeah.
We're like, this one, straight gravity.
That is some 1920s, 1930s technology right
I'm
there.
flying high, defying gravity. Alright, LADWP is also responsible for the city's groundwater and recycled water. LADWP wears a lot of hats, folks. They are busy, a very busy city. What's a department? In 2023, 9% of LA's water was sourced from groundwater that primarily comes from the San Fernando Basin. In fact, 89% of all groundwater used by LADWP is from the San Fernando Basin, with other basins making up the other 11%. Though the only 9% of LA's water came from groundwater in 2023, the city heavily relies on groundwater during droughts. So, like when you lived there. When in periods of drought, groundwater has accounted for 23% of total water supply in the city since the 70s, just on average. All right, Ellie. How are you feeling so far? This has been a lot of background on LA's water imports. Like, again, we have a lot of players in this game.
That's what I'm learning. There are a lot of acronyms here, but I'm following. I'm keeping track. There's big players. It's a big city. Like, they have to have a plan. They have to get organized. So
Gosh darn right.
You better hope they kind of know what they're doing at least.
Right.
I mean, overall, honestly, it does seem like LA has their act together in regards to their water supply.
Right? Like, I was actually a little surprised. But not everything is almondy. And I say almondy rather than peachy because almonds are so water intensive to grow. And as we know, they're primarily grown in California. So not everything is almondy with their water supply.
When I was in school, I remember talking about almonds so much and being like, don't eat the almonds. Like, the almonds are so water intensive.
Well, it's like a gallon of water per almond.
Guess what I had for lunch today?
Like 17 almonds.
Yes.
Boom,
Actually.
17 gallons gone.
Yeah, I need to revisit some of this water stuff. That was part of my life.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
All right, so on to the issues. Generally, LA is trying to reduce its reliance on water imports from the State Water Project, the Colorado River Aqueduct, and the LA Aqueduct, which together make up about 89% of LA's water use, just on imported water. So to reduce reliance on water imports, LADWP has been making investments in groundwater, recycled water, stormwater capture, water conservation, and efficiency. The passing of the LA Green New Deal in 2019 has helped them to further focus on reducing reliance on water imports and develop sustainability targets too.
I feel like they're doing, like, the right things. Like, are there any issues? Like, what about the issues going on?
Well, I mean, are you ready?
Yes.
All right. All right. Once again, buckle up. You're about to learn all about the Colorado River, and you might not even want to learn about it, but we're here. We're here.
I'm ready. Give
All
it
right.
to me.
So as we learned, the Colorado River Aqueduct supplies water to LA through MWD. While there isn't anything wrong with the aqueduct itself, the Colorado River, which supplies the Colorado River Aqueduct, is increasingly running dry, and most years the river is unable to make it all the way to the Gulf of California where it would historically flow. For the river that 1 in 8 Americans depend on, irrigates 15% of the nation's crops, and provides a large portion of LA's waters, this is bad news bears. By the 1980s, the Colorado River was transformed into one of the world's largest distribution systems to meet the demands of the West. However, the 1922 Colorado River Compact, which divided the river's waters among the 7 states and Mexico, was based on years of unusually wet conditions. And those 7 states that rely on the Colorado River are Arizona, California, Colorado, Nevada, New Mexico, Utah, and Wyoming. So once the water was allocated from this 1922 Colorado River Compact, the years of unusually wet conditions and high river flow passed, and the usual dry weather returned. Quickly, it became apparent that the Colorado River Compact allocated more water than it was able to give. However, rather than adjusting their water allotments, the states doubled down on using what they were promised by the compact, and in doing so, have brought the nation's largest water reservoirs down to historic low levels. To make matters worse, since 2000, a persistent drought has caused a 25% shortfall in the river's flow, exacerbating the situation.
Okay, I actually remember learning about this, how the Colorado River used to flow out into the Gulf of Mexico, and now it doesn't.
Yes, but it was the Gulf of California.
Or, yeah, sorry, Gulf,
Yep.
That makes a lot more sense. As I said it, I was
Fact check. Yeah, so the water rights system that's currently in place to help states with their allocations is based on a more than 150-year-old system called prior appropriation. Prior appropriation can basically be thought of as the first come, first served model of water rights. The system benefits those who first settled in the West by giving them water rights over someone who settled later on. Additionally, those with water rights must put all of their water allotment to beneficial use or risk losing part of their water allotment. Ultimately, the system in place is based on the principles of first come, first serve, and use it or lose it. Because of the first come, first serve, and use it or lose it principles of prior appropriation, about 80% of Colorado's river goes to agriculture. because those farmers were, the first ones to settle.
Yeah.
So first come, first serve, they get all the water.
Yeah.
And Big Ag, they use most of that water for low value, water intensive crops like hay and alfalfa, which are often grown in the desert, which, in my opinion, is the best spot to grow water intensive crops. Obviously.
Obviously, you love your strawberries being real good.
Right. They're not even that good. Like when they're not farm fresh or like picked from the farm when they're like grown in a desert.
Yep.
You can tell.
Yep.
You can tell. All right. So adopting modern irrigation technologies and planting drought-tolerant crops in the desert rather than water-intensive crops, Big Ag could significantly reduce their water use. However, farmers are worried if they transition to less water-intensive crops and adopt modern technologies, thus reducing their water use, their allotments would be reduced under the prior appropriation system. Climate change is also impacting the Colorado River. The river is primarily fed by the snowmelt from the Rocky Mountains, and as climate change intensifies, warmer temperatures are expected to continue to reduce snowpack. Reduced snowpack means less snowmelt and a longer dry season without adequate river flows. Increased temperatures will also increase the need for water from the river, and increased temperatures will increase evaporation.
Man, that is not good.
No, it's not. The last looming threat to the Colorado River just so happens to be the Trump administration. Right? I know. What is a net threat? Anyway, so the 7 states that rely on the Colorado River and the federal government are currently negotiating new water usage agreements that must be completed by the end of 2026 before the current operating rules for the Colorado River expire.
Do you think they'll make it, or will they extend that deadline?
Well, let me finish this paragraph because I may be reading from a script. I don't know. Okay, so, however, federal funding freezes, cuts to the Department of the Interior, and canceled contracts by the Department of Government Efficiency are threatening these negotiations and the health of the river.
So, to answer my question, this deadline will likely be extended.
I don't know if it'll be extended. I don't know. I feel like it's just...
They have to figure it out.
I don't know. I mean, the Trump administration doesn't believe in climate change, so... Yeah.
Just
so how does that affect? I mean, climate change is like clearly affecting the Colorado River. Yeah. So
don't even get me started.
don't get me started. All right. So Ann Castle, the former U.S. representative and chair of the Upper Colorado River Commission, who was asked to resign 1 week after Trump took office, says that funding freezes have already impacted water conservation programs. Additionally, the contracts canceled by the Department of Government Efficiency were reportedly involved with environmental impact studies and the management of Lake Powell and Lake Mead, 2 of the nation's largest reservoirs. So, I mean, as you said, will it get done? I don't know. All I know is it's going to be very interesting to see how the Colorado River fares under the Trump administration. Whoops. So, everything with the Colorado River was the first threat that the LADWP is facing in supplying water to the city. The next threat that LADWP faces in regards to its water supply is generalized climate change. We've already gone over how climate change is affecting the Colorado River and ultimately the Colorado River Aqueduct, but how is it impacting other sources of LA's water? LA's other main water sources, the LA Aqueduct and State Water Project, are faring better than the Colorado River, but they are not out of the woods. Both the LA Aqueduct and the State Water Project heavily depend on snowmelt and rainstorms from the Sierra Nevada mountains. Similar to the Colorado River, as temperatures increase, snowpack and precipitation will lessen, which will result in less snowmelt and rain and runoff draining into the rivers, lakes, and tributaries that feed the aqueducts, and ultimately feed LA's taps. Following a study completed in 2011, the state said that it expects that by 2100, the average temperatures in the Sierra Nevadas will be 8 degrees higher there will be a 10% reduction in precipitation, and snowpack will be significantly reduced. The study was updated in 2020 with similar results. Why bless you, Ellie?
Oh, sorry. Wow, I was so stunned by that. I just had to sneeze and get it out. That's scary. Yikes. I don't even know what to say.
I know, it's not ideal, but we endure. So climate change is also shifting California's cyclical hydrological conditions. Naturally, California experiences years that are hotter and drier and other years that are a little cooler and a little wetter. However, recent hydrological conditions have shown warmer average temperatures, more extreme precipitation patterns, such as larger storms and drier periods between the storms, a shift in precipitation to more rain and less snow, and a decreased snowpack in the Sierra Nevadas, leading to drier summers. I'm sure you've seen it in the news. California has an extended drought, and then they get drenched with a 2-week-long atmospheric river, and then they go back into a drought until another extreme precipitation event happens. And then because it's so dry, wildfires are more likely to break out and burn down all of LA. The usual stuff. Again, California does experience hydrological cycles, though not typically as extreme, has been seen in the last few decades.
Okay, so what's the next threat?
The next threat is contamination.
Surprise, surprise.
Contamination of groundwater sources is significantly impacting the LADWP's ability to become less reliant on imported water. The San Fernando Basin, an aquifer accounting for 89% of LA's groundwater, in addition to the other water basins, has been heavily contaminated by byproducts and chemicals from dry cleaning, manufacturing, metal finishes, septic systems, chemical processing, fertilizers, and pesticides. Of the 115 water supply wells in the city that tap into the underground aquifers like the San Fernando Basin, only 41 of them could be used because of contamination and just historical neglect. So without those wells, the city's water supply is further limited. Fortunately, LADWP has been working towards removing contaminants through the construction of 4 large-scale groundwater remediation facilities. The groundwater remediation facilities are set to be complete this year. In the meantime, local water supplies are treated and blended with water from other sources to meet drinking water standards. Contamination is also a problem for LA's other water sources. During a 2020 assessment of the Owens Valley watershed that supplies the LA Aqueduct, LADWP found that the LA Aqueduct was most vulnerable to geothermal activities. These geothermal activities naturally release arsenic that end up in the Owens River and ultimately feed into the LA Aqueduct. Other minor contamination concerns involved livestock grazing, wildlife, and unauthorized use of storage reservoirs. Contamination concerns from the MWD water sources of the Colorado River and State Water Project are caused by stormwater runoff, recreational activities, wastewater discharges, wildlife, and wildfires. To combat contamination, MWD is working towards improving watershed protection programs, as it is cheaper to protect water at the source than to treat it later on.
It's interesting you talk about some of that stuff because I remember seeing different things and the water systems and the streams that we would go check out and stuff. We measured one from a golf course and looked at different water quality levels the further you got away from the golf course to look at contamination. Anyway, that's a lot of threats to LADWP's water supply for sure.
Yeah, as usual, it's not great. I hate to be a Debbie Downer, but there's a lot going on. LADWP faces a lot of challenges, and in addition to the mess that we've turned the Colorado River into, climate change is impacting all of LA's water sources and contamination. WP faces a few more challenges. First, the water infrastructure that brings water to LA is overdue for modernization.
Surprise, surprise.
And it's like thousands of miles.
7,000, you said.
It was 7,500, I think.
Yeah.
But like that's just one water source. Like there's so it's miles and miles and miles. It's fine. Once in the city, water needs to go through LADWP's water distribution system infrastructure, which is also in need of updates. However, LADWP is investing $6 billion over the next several years to improve water
Wait,
infrastructure.
I literally said $6 billion when we were talking before we started this. Remember, I was like, they need like $6 billion to fix the water system.
But okay, and $6 billion over the next several years, it's not enough.
Oh, no.
To like fix thousands of miles of like water infrastructure.
This is what I'm saying. You should be able to take your tax dollars and like say what you want it to go towards. Like, I
want to fix the water.
I know you were in the military and stuff, but I'm like, can we just like put my tax dollars towards fixing the water system?
The military budget is too large.
Exactly.
I mean,
anyway,
but we're not here to talk politics.
No,
we're here to talk LA water. All right. Okay, so second, an additional challenge is after decades of a growing population, expanding urbanization, an increase in impervious water surfaces, stormwater runoff diversions, and increasingly dry periods, the aquifers can't keep up. Groundwater is being depleted faster than it can be replenished. However, water conservation and recycling and stormwater recharge projects offer glimmers of hope. It's estimated that if LADWP put more resources into capturing stormwater rather than allowing the stormwater to be channeled into the ocean, the city could capture 132,000 acre-feet per year of water.
Yeah. I've seen that water just running away, just running off the street.
Off it goes. All right. Finally, LADWP is subject to politics. As environmentalism grew in LA, the political scene was forced to grow with it, or be exposed for having anti-environmental policies. This resulted in LADWP's water management issues being tied into the politics of the city, whatever the politics were. The LADWP was forced to respond to the local political scene and the changes within it through accountability to the Board of Water and Power Commissioners, the mayor, or city council members. A former water manager for the city said, "There is no question for us here that the priorities and policies are set by the mayor and the city council." Additionally, funding for the water resource programs is supplemented by MWD and local, state, and federal grants. So that supplemental funding is very much subject to politics.
So, how else does LADWP plan on turning away from imported water? Are there other sources? Like, could they use seawater? What are we doing?
All right, just like the rest of this podcast, it is complicated.
Surprise, surprise. I keep saying that. Surprise, surprise.
Taking water from the ocean and turning it into drinkable water through a process called desalination is an option. So what you just mentioned.
I've heard of it before, but I feel like it's crazy expensive or something like that.
Something like that, right? So it's water or seawater desalination is already done in small quantities in California. However, it's extremely expensive and the cost goes beyond just simple economics. In addition to the capital cost, seawater desalination uses large amounts of energy, emits greenhouse gases, harms marine life, and produces brine as a byproduct. Wait, you know what brine is, right?
It sounds gross.
It's like twice as salty as the seawater. Like brine, because you season dill pickles with brine.
Oh yeah.
So it's like just super, super salty.
Ew.
So in California, alternative water supplies are 4 times cheaper than desalination. And maybe one day California will rely more heavily on desalination as a water source, but that day is not here yet. LADWP is turning more to recycled water, though. As of 2023, 2% of LA's water comes from recycled water. Now, I know that's not a lot, but 2% is a start. Their water recycling program relies heavily on the city's wastewater treatment infrastructure to deliver the recycled water throughout the city. The wastewater system has about 6,700 miles of major interceptors and mainline sewers, more than 11,000 miles of house sewer connections, 49 pumping plants, and 4 water reclamation plants. This Bureau of Sanitation treated wastewater is then recycled and delivered by LADWP for use at 179 sites in the city for irrigation, industrial, and environmental uses, in addition to being used at 200 individual customer service accounts. The success of the water recycling program has only been possible through LADWP and the Bureau of Sanitation collabing. According to the Bureau of Sanitation manager, the two agencies once had very distinct and separate goals, and the recent collaboration that they have had only benefits city residents. The majority of LA's efforts to move away from imported water appeared geared towards conservation efforts. As I've said, LADWP is aggressively working towards reducing reliance on imported water from MDW sources. Whoops, I meant from MWD sources and the LA Aqueduct. And they have made significant progress in water conservation.
So there's hope, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Over the past 30 years, LA grew by about 1.2 million people, yet they use less water than they have in previous decades. So boom, hope.
Hey, I was a part of that. I used less water.
You did, yeah.
Took a 5-minute shower.
Eco rap. In the 80s, LA residents were using about 172 gallons per day, compared to the 2010s, where residents used an average of only 119 gallons per day. Though 119 gallons per day per person is better than the 80s, there's still a lot of room for improvement. Have you ever had to track your water use?
Yeah, when I was in Eco Rep, we had like a water tracking program.
How much per day?
I don't remember.
Because I just did it for one of my classes. I, for 2 weeks, averaged like 31 gallons a day.
Oh, dang.
I know. I was so water savvy.
Interesting.
I also didn't shower very much this 2 weeks, so definitely did. And I didn't do laundry, so it's probably a little higher. So I would have taken care of myself.
I wish if I didn't have blood on my clothes from work as a veterinarian.
She's a veterinarian.
Yeah.
Yes.
And maybe in my hair. I wish I could shower less. Okay, so how did they do it? How did they go from 172 gallons to 119 gallons per day? Because that's a pretty significant decrease.
Right. So it was a combination of behavior changes by residents, policy changes, and the implementation of water-saving technology. For example, LADWP started using a 2-tiered water rate structure that charges more if you use more water than what the first tier allows you to use.
So some incentives,
yeah,
you save money if you do that. So you're charged more for water if you go into the second tier.
Yes.
Every gallon of water costs more if you're in tier 2.
Well,
it's like the American tax.
I think it's every gallon. I don't know exactly how they charge it, but it is more expensive if you use so much water, you go outside of tier 1 and then you're into tier 2.
It's like the tax system that we have. Federal taxes. If you're in a higher tax bracket, you get charged more.
Until you hit a certain cap.
We won't get into that.
Yeah, you know how it is. So to kick off conservation efforts, LADWP launched a citywide campaign back in the 90s to reduce indoor water use. So the city emphasized installing low-flow toilets, shower heads, and faucets. LADWP and MWD even gave out free or low-cost water-efficient toilets during the campaign. The program is estimated to save 43,000 acre-feet of water per year. You know,
Honey, I got a free toilet.
not even, I got a free toilet. I wish. That'd be sick. As a homeowner, getting a free or like low-cost toilet.
Yeah,
But
do it.
I'm telling you, I think that their reduction on water was because they stopped using water beds. Those things are freaky.
1980s.
It wasn't the 80s or the 90s.
I don't know. We weren't alive, so
I don't know. It shouldn't have. I've seen them. They should have been extinct. They should have never been allowed. Straight to jail.
That's the game-changing thing. They're like, well, when we stop selling water beds,
you won't believe how much water we saved. Yeah, so around the time of this campaign launch, the LADWP decided that their goal moving forward would be to keep imported water use from the LA aqueduct the same or less than the 1990s water use. So they've used this goal to help design many policies about water conservation. Another way the city has cut imported water use is through a rebate program conducted by MWD. The program gives rebates to owners who replace or remove their lawns or water-intensive landscapes. So a homeowner would get a rebate if they swapped from a grass lawn to a desert-friendly mulch, dirt, or native plant situation.
I legit remember this when I was in college.
Really?
There were a lot of houses in the city I lived in that turned over their yards and got rid of their grass. Even my school did, like half the grass lawns.
Because you were there from 2014 to 2018.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, from 2014 to 2016, MWD gave residents over $310 million in rebates that resulted in more than 160 million square feet of lawn removed. Their rebate program is actually the largest in the nation, which is pretty neat. And you saw this lawn removal program and rebate system like firsthand. So
yeah, legitimately,
that's why she's on the podcast today.
It was pretty cool. Like, people got really cool yards and stuff, and they didn't have to water them.
Yeah, I think if you live in a desert, you should have desert landscape.
Yeah.
Green grass does not grow in the desert. It should be, again, illegal.
And there's still greenery, like cacti and stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We don't need, and turf. Let's not talk about the microplastics of turf. Okay, so the city is taking big steps towards their water conservation goals. Water use will still need to be reduced in order to achieve their ambitious goals. Their goals are that by 2044, 31% of water will come from MWD compared to the 51% currently, 26% from the LA aqueduct compared to 38% now, and 15% from groundwater compared to the current 9% from groundwater, and 20% coming from water conservation efforts, with 8% coming from recycled sources. So they're looking for a big reduction from MWD and the LA aqueduct by 2044. So, Ellie, before we wrap up, what are your thoughts? Do you have any questions here? We covered a lot of material.
We really did. This is like a more thorough understanding I got than when I was in school and was like an eco rep and also low-key an environmental science research person.
That's because I have like 16 sources, and because I researched this for like probably 24 hours, honestly. So that's why it's so thorough. Any other thoughts?
I guess, what was your favorite thing you learned while researching for this episode?
All right. That's like the best question you could have ever asked me. So, Owens Lake. Oh, the Owens Lake debacle was ridiculous. It was drama. So remember how the LA municipal water system bought water rights to Owens Valley in 1905 to build the LA aqueduct? You remember that? That was when the guy was like, take it or leave, or
yeah.
No. it's here, take it. Like, with
That
the
was
water.
55 minutes ago.
I know, it was so long ago. So sorry. Okay, so the residents of Owens Lake were not happy that their water was being taken away by LA. And I mean, I would not have been either. So after the LA aqueduct was built, farmers found that they didn't have enough water to successfully farm, and their lakes, streams, rivers, and farms were drying up. And then a drought in 1924 exacerbated things.
Wasn't there like the Great Dust Bowl or something?
You know, I actually think that was.
Yeah. Or was that in the
30s?
Midwest? I don't remember.
Well, the Dust Bowl was in, like, you know, because I was in the Midwest.
Yeah. Never mind.
Yeah.
Sidetrack.
All right, so in order to stop the city of LA from taking their water and drying out Owens Valley, the farmers and ranchers of Owens Valley took 500 pounds of dynamite and blew up a part of the LA aqueduct.
You know who would do that?
Who?
My dad. He has dynamite.
He shouldn't have dynamite.
For the beaver dams.
No, but we like beaver dams are good. Like, that's really bad. Your dad needs to stop doing. That's not good.
Never mind. You heard nothing here.
For real, beaver dams are good. We like them. Okay, so the city was not amused by this 500 pounds of dynamite stunt and labeled these farmers and ranchers as terrorists. The farmers and ranchers then took control of part of the aqueduct and let all of the water that was headed to LA drain away. LA sued them. By 1926, the city of LA owned 90% of Owens Valley, and because they had so much money and the farmers were having unsuccessful yields due to a lack of water, the city bought farmers and ranchers off one by one to gain access to their water rights. Owens Valley fight for water rights is still ongoing to this day and is now known as the California Water Wars. There's quite a few podcasts on Spotify about it, if you're interested. That's actually how I discovered this topic, was through the California Water Wars on Spotify.
Okay, I have like one more question, I think. Because we're talking about California and like LA water, I have to ask, what are your thoughts on the Trump administration's decision to release water from the dams? Like, is that good, bad?
This is also my favorite question ever. It's almost like I scripted it. I love that. So, okay. Following the horrific LA wildfires, the media was going wild with misinformation about why fire hydrants weren't working and saying that LA didn't have enough water to put out the fires. So in response to these claims, President Trump ordered the release of water in Central California with the intent for it to reach LA. Following the orders, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers let about 2.2 billion gallons out of the reservoirs on January 31st of this year. So unfortunately, all of that water went to waste as it was released during the wet season when it was not needed.
This is what happens when you let idiots be in charge.
Correct. Yep. So though the release shouldn't have a huge impact on farmers during the peak of the dry season, the release of water was about 2 days worth of irrigation. So not a huge amount, but 2 days in the summer can make or break crops. So additionally, the California Department of Water Resources Director, Carla Nemeth, said that there was little coordination between federal officials and the state and local water managers for the Army Corps about the release. So ultimately, the water did not reach LA, lessen the wildfires, or give LA more water. LA has, as we learned, quite a bit of water. It's just all imported. Alrighty, we just hit an hour. Let's wrap this up. So clearly, the LA water system has a lot going on. Without the development of the LA Aqueduct by the LADWP and the Colorado River Aqueduct and State Water Project by MWD, LA wouldn't be the city we know and love today. Though the city is trying to move away from those imported water sources due to concerns about the reliability of it in the future, it's easier said than done. LA has many obstacles to overcome before they're able to reduce imported water dependence and move towards more sustainable water sources, such as recycled water, groundwater, and improved conservation efforts. Despite the challenges that lie ahead, LA seems committed to working towards water independence. Go LA.
Woo!
All right, that's it for today, folks. Thank you so much for tuning into the second episode of the No Name Podcast that really isn't a podcast and is actually my homework. Before I sign off, I wanted to give a special thanks to Ellie for joining me today as we learned about LA's reliance on imported water. So check out this week's citations if you'd like to learn more. And this is your host, Anna. See you next time.